welcome to the Droid and Dragon Cantina, a podcast highlighting independent science fiction and fantasy authors. Our guest this week is M.A. Wall, a writer working out of Texas who has authored the Shattered Hollows series. We had a rollicking conversation about being in the military, world building, and the idea of tyranny in fiction. There's this British guy that I follow online that he was kind of, he's this dude, he's like an influencer, but he loves America. And he says like things that will like break the British brain. Like, and he's kind of say like how like being from Britain, if you say if something's like an hour away, he's like, oh, we're not going to go. I was like, that's just too far.
Yes.
And he's like, in America, they don't even blink at that.
No, it's not even a consideration for us. We're like, oh, good. I get to listen to my next audiobook or something. Like we actually kind of look forward to it.
Right.
And I've heard people like talk about how Americans are nuts because we look at, the time that is on the GPS and we're like,
we measure distance in time, not in like, meters or kilometers. Cause that was the other thing you said. It's like, no, like Americans measure like in time, like it's 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, whatever.
Yep, absolutely. And it makes sense for us because we're trying to plan out our days that way. And if you say to me like 400 miles, I'm like, in what kind of vehicle over what kind of terrain? How long is that going to take me to get there?
Yes, that's that military in you.
Yep, absolutely. The military. Well, and I was raised in the military too. My dad was an infantry officer. So when I joined the military, it was because my mother was ill and I wanted to go to college. I really did. And we weren't going to have enough money. So I joined in June of 2001. I did not join because of what happened on September 11th. I was already in basic training when that happened. I was in my final training exercise. So we didn't even have access to televisions. But it was nuts. So people were like, oh, you joined the military for 9/11. I was like, it was for the college money.
Probably like most people in the late 90s, back when it was, before we were, forever at war.
Oh, yeah. We weren't, at the time. We were at peace-ish when I joined. I don't know that the military that we've ever really been like fully at peace. Whenever people are like, we're going to stop the endless wars. Okay. They've been going on since like World War II.
It's just the ones you know about and the ones you don't.
Yes. I was going to say that is part of it is like, and we don't call everything a war, right? We call them operations, or a military, or not even a military. What was it? A police action. So they're always couching these battles and wars in these other ways. And that actually is very much something that I talk about a lot. And that is, we can say, it's just like doing statistics, right? I can make a number mean anything I want it to, right? If I just sit and I play with those numbers long enough, I can make it look good and like it's a positive thing, even when all the numbers are terrible. So it's the same with words, right? We can sit and kind of bandy about and use different like cloak words to make it seem, oh, this is better somehow.
So on that note, let's get to your books. Tell us about your series.
So my series is called Shattered Hollows, and I am a geologist. So I promise I didn't wax too romantic about geology in the book. It does show up a little bit. But the actual name of the series is based on a training outpost that is used to train assassins. And, mercenaries and people for hire in battle and security, that kind of thing. So that's how I named the series. It was actually one that I did not ever anticipate writing the series. It just kind of was birthed out of an experiment. I went to my friends and said, okay, I want to write something new and challenging. Because I was bored. I just didn't know what I wanted to write about. And they gave me a swamp several thousand years in the future, having people with zero sex, female and male, present. And what was the other thing? There was something else in there that they said that was like, and not too much geology, basically. I wasn't allowed to talk about geology. The reason they said it, and then they said a training camp. And they knew by saying that it was going to piss me off. So it was like almost on purpose. They wanted to irritate me. I do not like training scenes in text. They're great for a montage, a la Rocky. I love it in a montage. I love it on television. Training scenes on TV or in film, absolutely great. 19 chapters of how I learned to use my magical prowess irritates me so much. And because I'm like, It can be fun. You know, there can be a lot of plot driving and stuff like that. And I'm not totally against it, but that they did that to me on purpose because they knew my feelings. And it ended up turning into something that I had no idea that I would suddenly find myself writing even more and more and more, to the point where I had like over 150 pages of a short story that I just wanted to try. So I kind of put it to the side for a little while. I started this about 10 years ago. And so the series, I think I had it almost fully written right about when 2019 hit. And then I got pregnant and was like, well, I got pregnant and I just could not write anymore. I was taking all of my creative energy into making a baby. So I did come back to it. Let's see, in 2021, I think, is when I met Michael Evans, and we were just on a fan page for Ellie Modizette Jr. I am fangirl. I love Ellie Modizette Jr. to the point of it's ridiculous. I absolutely enjoy all of his books so much. I don't write very much like him, but he's definitely an inspiration. So I met him. He wanted to hear what my questions for Lee were. So I typed a bunch of questions in. He read my questions and said, "These are really well written. Are you an author?" And I've written, but I'd never published anything before. When I write in general, these books, I wrote these for me. This is because I enjoyed writing them. I enjoyed exploring these new worlds. And they're just so evocative and interesting that Michael was like, well, let me read it. And when he did, he said, let's publish this. This would be really good. So that's when it really became a thing for me. And I started to share it with people in my friend group and outside of my friend group. And the feedback has been absolutely phenomenal. Mostly the things that people would say is, I'm so irritated and frustrated with this person or this character, and I'm so elated and excited by this. And people are having such emotional responses to what I was writing that I decided to go ahead and flesh it all the way out and release it. So books 1 and 2 are now available on Kindle. I am going to eventually expand that to other places, but I am a perfectionist. And before I expand to every other type of way of getting to my books, I'm going to make sure it's absolutely perfect. Because updating your manuscript on one site, easy peasy. Updating it on 19 different sites, no thank you. So we've got 4 books that will be out by September. So there's 2 more books coming that will be out by September. And then in October, hopefully October, November, there will be a box set released with a 5th book that has timelines, character art, and an encyclopedia of terms and characters, because it's a lot of named characters.
You're going full Frank Herbert on us. You're going to have an appendices or a glossary in there.
Yeah, I do. I think it's fair and the nice thing to do. It's when you have a lot of named characters, it's really hard, I think, just as a reader. So just because I know all of those characters intrinsically, well, yeah, I wrote the book and it took me 10 years. I've had really good familiarity with it. So I think it's a lot to expect people to read it one time through and be like, ah, yes, this person. And I also use a lot of names that have Igbo source, if you will. So they're sourced from Igbo, there's a couple of very obviously Latin names in there, like Janine, or English names. And then also some Chinese names as well. So I wanted to make sure that I honor, the different cultures that build into that.
So are you always is the world building kind of what got you in, or is that kind of what drew you into the writing, or is that the thing you like to focus on? Because if you're making enough to where you need a glossary, it sounds like you sound like you dove into it, right into the deep end of the pool.
Basically, yeah. I think the reason to have a glossary is more along the lines of explaining a couple of added things that are hinted at culturally. When it comes to the world building, I actually focus a lot more on action and dialogue. That is my preference. I don't like walls of text that explain, the gilding of this area and the opacity of the wall, whatever. I don't appreciate having a wall of text that tells me what a room looks like. I think it's fine to just say a room that has a lot of stuff. You're allowed to say it's decorated in bronze and pink or whatever the hell. But let people use their imaginations. You don't have to guide literally everything. So I think that one of the things that I do in my writing that kind of made me nervous about publishing in the first place is I do not assume that my reader is an idiot. I assume anybody that is reading my work wants to read it and is smart enough to understand it and get through it, because it's contextually, like, it's fine. You don't need to understand quantum physics to read my book, even though it is based in a world that we've harnessed
But
quantum
none
physics.
of those like Star Trek scenes where they spend 10 minutes explaining some scientific theory that I'm going to forget like in the next 5 minutes, or after you're trying to explain to me like I'm going to understand what it is. And
yeah, no. I even have my characters. I even have my characters be like, "Why the hell do I care how it works? I don't care." And because they don't care, why would they? That's like me being like, "Oh, let me explain everything about this phone to you in a book." Like, I use the phone all the time. I don't know how it works.
Someone made a great point. I forget who it was and where, but there's scenes that they're sometimes happening in like TV shows or movies. And he says in real life, like they would never have this conversation. It's like, we're not going to talk about all this because we both work here. We already know this. We're not going to sit here and talk about something that we already know. Like it's something that's so clearly done for the audience's benefit.
Yes.
But I also kind of wonder sometimes, like there's a debate of whether like, is that even something that like should be done? Because one, it's not realistic. And two, how much of it does the audience really need to know anything? Right? Like like if we're watching Star Trek, we don't need to know how warp drive works. We just assume, okay, it's a thing, it works, and that's how they get from one planet to another, like in a couple of hours versus 400 years.
Absolutely. I do think it's important, like, for the diehard fans to be able to dive deep into those things. Like when people come up and they're like, it wouldn't work because of this. It's important to be able to have a conversation with people, but at the same time, I don't have to put that in my books, right? So I did make sure that I'm informed and that the plot is informed and that the things I'm saying are well informed, but I also am not sitting there saying, oh, based on this law of physics. No, because first of all, that's going to shut people off. It would shut me down completely. And on top of all of that, I am a scientist. I'm actually a geochemist. And I am very well aware of the fact that we have our laws, but those laws are only appropriate for like on Earth. And everything changes when you leave here, right? There's different pressure, there's different chemical makeup for atmosphere. Everything changes when you're outside of, Earth. So it's really crazy to make an assumption that a law that works here is the same literally everywhere. And it's also crazy to think that the laws would stay the same when we are still consistently learning new things about the way that the universe works, right? And even when we learn something new, we think about like those big theories, like the Big Bang Theory. There are plenty of reasons to think that it might have been something different. There's a lot of evidence that things did not happen the way that we thought in the 1960s. So I wanted to leave a lot of space in here for the laws may be different, but this is the way they work, right? And so I'm just illustrating what I know to be true, not trying to go much further than that, right? So my characters that I have in the book are supremely overpowered because they're going against highly overpowered forces, right? So we have people that are modified to the point that their genetics, we don't even have to wait for a generation to pass to see a change in somebody's body, their physicality, right? So my biggest example for this is I have an entire society of people that they tend to live underground because they live in highly radiated areas. The context of this book is it takes 6,000 years. It takes place 6,000 years in the future after a long period of alien warfare called the Shining Wars. So during this time, we have a lot of problems that happen on the planet of the Earth, and people are driven underground in certain areas, and they create their own cities. And while they're underground for several hundred years after this, they get really pale, bioluminescent, all sorts of things. And so they're basically like purple white. And then they finally start sending people up to the surface, and they come back brown, black, red, completely different colors and very bright colors. And it's because of the fact that I've put it into a way that humanity survives because we automatically and immediately genetically change ourselves to fit the environment we live in by this point. So in my mind, I've leveled the playing field, right? Why am I going to be mad that somebody's black when I could turn black just by standing up on the surface for a while, right?
If only you were that easy to tan in real life, man.
I know. It's not a thing I do. You can see that this is also kind of like wish fulfillment for me. Like I live in Texas and I'm this pale.
This, unfortunately, all my ancestors came from a place where the sun didn't shine a lot. So we're not, no. And my skin doesn't know what to do with all that big bright thing in the sky. Just, it's like,
it's like, there's so much vitamin D. Yeah. So that was kind of the thought process I had, was level the playing field for everybody and then show that fascism is still a problem, right? It's not about men versus women. It's not about black versus white. It is always power over others, right? And so even 6,000 years in the future, we're still people and we're still going to have these types of things pop up where there's instability, some kind of social or cultural instability, and somebody with power has the means, the ability, and the motivation to take advantage of that. And that has been true throughout all history.
I was about to say there's no shortage of examples, in the past, and it's all over, everywhere you look, whether it's Africa, Asia, Europe. Like there's always, you go look anywhere, there's someone that gets a little overly ambitious and doesn't really care, about others
who they hurt.
No, the rest of you just are here to serve me, and then
Yep. And I did not realize, again, I did start writing this 10 years ago, and the current administration was not even a blip on my radar. So I will say that publishing when I did have this moment where I'm like, everybody's going to think that I'm talking about like the president. I'm not. Like he didn't exist to me when I created Magnus, who is one of our lead villains. We have a couple of lead villains because honestly, good villains don't work very well unless they've got a team. But it all does boil, but it all boils down to like, the viper's nest or the leopards ate my face kind of moment for a lot of them, because that is also the way it works, is we kill off our seconds in command. And, it's a thing that happens in fascism over history.
Yeah. Like, again, no shortage of examples in real life. Yeah. And that's all. And that's all I was saying. And that could be fun too, to like watch the underlings, get it.
Yes.
When they've been, there's always those people who want to, kiss up to power, and then they realize at a certain point, like they don't actually care about you.
I don't want to do it. They don't care about you. You are fodder, just like everybody else.
You're always a means to an end. And
yep, that's what we are, right? Like I think one of the things that I really wanted to convey throughout this entire journey is that, true power has nothing to do with money, right? It never has. It's information, right? And so whenever they dismantle the Department of Education, like I'm going to go into current times right now, but that is literally them attacking the most powerful assets that we have, which is knowledge, the ability to interact with the world in a realistic way without somebody having to tell us what to feel and think. So the Department of Education was originally created to protect people that have learning disabilities, need added assistance, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But also to safeguard education in general, so that we're not sitting there telling people what to believe religiously, et cetera. So dismantling that is very much so, that's an attack towards the American people's actual power, which is information, education, the ability to use our own brains, right? So I do think that that's one thing that if you're reading through this, you're going to pick up on. That definitely is a theme, that it is all about information. It is all about the fact that whenever we're hoarding information, that's the real power that's being stolen from people, right?
Well, man, and it's I guess again, like all throughout history, it's usually like whoever had the most, once upon a time, like the Arab world was the most advanced, most sophisticated thing. And back when Europe was just like a disease-ridden hellhole.
Yes.
Like a collection of disease-ridden hellhole countries.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the Crusades, and then of course, the Moors kind of like taking over, parts of Italy and Spain, and I think they got into France too. But like, then again, spurting, eventually teaching, the Europeans that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Granted, that was conquest and colonization, So, I mean, obviously not good things, but then the people, they learn the stuff and then they kind of rise up and then eventually go and start conquesting and colonizing other people. And
Yeah.
that's you kind of see that's unfortunate. It's that cycle that seems to just, it's always perpetuating. I think that word now, I think like now it's like the global thing is because we've kind of run out of new places to do it. So now it's just more kind of like people kind of vying for power, but like with the United States being like this big, like now like technology is the new thing. And then there's like AI creeping around out there.
Yep.
Which has always been like the great sci-fi boogeyman.
Oh yeah,
But
absolutely.
I mean, it seems like that it's always the, like you said, like the knowledge or use like technology or something that the powerful classes are always using to try and, hammer. Yeah,
absolutely. Like if you give the greater population of the world the knowledge that they need to be able to, say we create a technology that helps us create food, right? Well, if I give that technology away, I'm also giving away the income I can get from it, right? And so that's what I mean by the hoarding of power, right? That information, that knowledge that could be used at a lower level, at a civilian and citizenry level, is hoarded for a lot of different reasons. It's the same with like laser technology and drone technology. These are not things that are being shared with the public. And so it's always interesting and kind of funny to me. Like there's a moment of like, I don't want to laugh about this, but it is ironic when people are talking about the Second Amendment, right? And they're talking about, well, I have my weapons. And I'm like, okay, I hope that saves you against a drone or a robotic dog.
Like someone who can launch a missile from like hundreds of miles away. And
I'm like, what is your weapon going to do for you?
Accuracy.
Yeah, somebody playing with an Xbox remote can literally take you out, man. They don't have to be in the same room. When I was in the military, we would have these like kind of like technology conferences, if you will, and it was always during like some kind of training. And I think this one was probably urban warfare. If I had to, it was probably urban warfare. And they had a weapon. They had a semi-automatic weapon that you could literally take the stock and just right in at a 90-degree angle. I can take the weapon. I didn't have to put my hands around the corner. Take my weapon around the corner, aim, fire. I've never even exposed myself. And that was 20 years ago, right? So again, when people say that they've got the ability to defend themselves, I'm like, you are massively outgunned, my friend.
Like,
and that is because and that's because that information and technology is not shared, right? I don't think it should be, but
that's one of the things that I like about science fiction and fantasy, and because it's always kind of like thinly veiled, if not veiled at all, socio-political commentary. Because and also I feel like it's or that it allows you to kind of say things and kind of play out this argument that like could be going on in society right now, whatever that is.
Yeah,
it allows you to kind of address things in a way that people like who might not like. If you come at somebody like, straight up, like in a political, like whether you're Republican or Democrat or whatever labels you want to put on, like people automatically kind of get their defenses up. But if you kind of present it to them in the form of like a book, now like you kind of like, okay, maybe I can, you can kind of get the wheels turning a little bit.
Absolutely, because this is fake, man. Yeah, it's fiction. It's fake. It's not real. Like that's the way I like to present it to people. Is like, who cares? I put romance in there. People like sex. That's in there. Like, so I tried to build something for everybody that also is like, but also remember these very important truths about the world around you. And that is that nobody is telling you everything. Not even the person you're married to tells you everything about themselves, like, because they don't even know. Right. So I do think it's just one of those moments for me as I'm hoping as people are reading it that they're truly, whether Democrat, Republican, independent, whatever, that they're identifying themselves with parts of the story, with parts of the characters, because I tried to make people that are just real. They're realistic people. I very much so tried to say, okay, what's a world look like where women no longer have to fight, to be recognized as females, as being competent leaders? It's no longer a fight. They're just doing their jobs and everyone's going with them because that's what we do now. What does that look like when a man is able to feel more than stoicism or passion or anger? What is it when they're allowed to just feel anxiety? nervousness, and convey it and tell people, this makes me freaking anxious. Isn't it nice to be able to just tell people how you feel without having to worry about losing your man card? So these are the things I really wanted to just, they're out of the picture. They're out of the equation. This is what humanity can look like in a good way, but also we're still going to have the negativity that comes up, right? It's easy to be all over the place whenever I'm talking about my books because it's 4 of them. Each of them is, the first 2 are the shortest ones. And the second 2 are quite long at almost 450, 600 pages each. So I haven't really figured that out yet because they're still going through the printing situation and I'm getting my mock-ups and everything. But, it's a lot to convey in a very short period of time. But I do think that what people are going to find reading this is, first of all, that a lot of the frustrations that you might read in the first book especially might echo kind of the frustrations that are going on right now. That was never my intention, but it definitely kind of comes across that way. And then in the following books, we're just talking about how do we pull enough people together that have enough power to actually do something, and how do you get them motivated?
So I'm curious, like because you said you started this back in 2019 and then you kind of shelved it for a while. So have you kind of turned the corner in your writing where you're kind of like, instead of thinking of it as a hobby, now you're looking at it as a profession, or are you still somewhere, hovering around that corner?
I'm kind of hovering. I still work as a geochemist. I'm actually the vice president of a small company here in Houston. And so I'm very dedicated to, still maintaining that business and working with them. But I would love to get to a point where all I do is write. That would be nice. Realistically, I think it's going to be a couple of years before I can actually even put myself in a position where I can do that. So as much as I'd like to, realistically, it's going to take some time. So I still have, a lot of people to support over here. And my mother-in-law lives with me. My kids live, we've got lots of people rolling around this house.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. Like, I actually spoke with another author who was like, even though she's got, at least 4, maybe 5 books now out. And, I was thinking at this point, like, you should be thoroughly into the, professional mindset, not like the hobbyist. And she's like, no, I still think it's kind of more like a hobby. And I'm like, after that, you've got a whole series of books out there. Like most people would be like, I am a writer now. And she's still kind of, I don't know, maybe it just speaks to that she's humble, but yeah.
Yeah. I absolutely love to write. I do think that it's something that we all, would love to be able to do, the thing that gives us the most passion and interest in life. And I never really, honest to goodness, thought it was even possible until last year. And I started to get really positive feedback. So it's kind of new to me, even the idea that it would be possible. And so I'm going slowly because I don't think it's a good idea to jump hard into something, especially when there's all of the instability that we're dealing with right now, just in general. There's a possibility the wrong person may read my book and be like, we need to ban this. Always possible, right? And I've seen they're taking Animal Farm in 1984 and Fahrenheit 451 and stuff like that off of certain shelves. So to me, I'm like, ooh, them's my inspiration for a lot of stuff.
Yeah, those books are very well established, but I always feel like if I could ever shake somebody up enough to warrant that kind of a response, I've succeeded in life as a writer.
I would like to think that, yeah, maybe someday we'll be like, we need to ban her. And I'm like, ooh, an international audience awaits. Yes. So yeah, absolutely. Because I do think that that's one of the things that happens in the US is if you ban something here, I guarantee you the rest of the world is like, ooh, and they want to know more about it.
Like there's something like just quintessentially American is like, you tell us not that we can't have that now that everybody wants it. I feel like the people don't understand that when you try to ban something like whether it's a book or an album, because remember even like all the back in the late, if you're old enough to remember when they started putting the warning labels on like albums, you're like, oh, those are the good ones.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Now it's like now I know which ones to go right for.
Exactly. My parents were absolutely horrified when they found my Insane Clown Posse CD when I was a kid. So, and I wasn't even the type of person that would listen to that. You know, I was a Celtic Twilight girl kind of situation. So it was very much, yes, that rebelliousness is very American. And I think it's also very like Gen X millennial coded for us. Like it's just, it's part of our nature to be like, who are you to tell me what to do? Where the hell were you? At
Right.
work?
It's
Okay.
like you raise us like on Star Wars and like Harry Potter and all these other books where it's always like someone fighting like this big oppressive force, or Lord of the Rings, all that stuff. It's like,
oh yeah, and we love a good underdog. You know, like what's your favorite thing in basketball? A Cinderella story, man, coming out of nowhere.
Rocky, come on, like
exactly. Like
like
them's
again,
our people. Yeah,
you like programmed at
underdog.
least 2 generations hardcore to be,
Mm-hmm.
the minute
To be
we
incredibly
feel,
just like, how dare you? Yeah.
right, the minute we feel the man bearing down on us, we're kind of like,
Yeah, we absolutely, and we
take much
muscle
to
up a
get
little
our,
bit. We're like, full.
right, to get us start bowing up and getting all prickly.
Oh yes, absolutely.
So speaking of that, like, who are some of your the people you like to read, or who would you consider your influences?
So I did mention I mentioned Elie Modizet Jr. already, and Ray Bradbury. Definitely two of my favorites right there. I actually started with Ray Bradbury with The Illustrated Man. Still love it. Still go and just read one or two of the stories occasionally. And I also am a huge fan, or I was a huge fan of Robert Jordan when I was younger, the same as Tolkien. I really liked them when I was younger. As I've gotten older, I found I do not have the patience for, just some of the walls of text. I always end up skipping through stuff. But they were absolutely marvelous when I was younger. I really enjoyed that kind of detail. So I love to read fantasy. I love to read romance, especially funny romance where ridiculous things happen. Yes, please. I would like to laugh, please. If I'm going to be on this ride for like 4 minutes of sex, because that's literally what a romance novel is for me, then I want it to be funny and entertaining. So I definitely have a lot of different things that I've read over time that I feel like I really integrated into this. Another interesting, and it's kind of one of these things I forgot about, but there's another interesting author out there named Lindsay Sands. She writes a vampire romance situation. And I thought they were so funny when I was younger. And it just kind of occurred to me after I've written all 4 of these books, oh, she had nanobots in her books too. And that made me kind of like, oh, so I'm going to go ahead and list her up there as maybe some like kind of like background inspiration for this. Other people I really like, I love Kate Elliott. She has a fantasy series that is absolutely fabulous the way that it's written. And goodness, there's so many. There's really so many. I don't really hold back. I love Heinlein. My maiden name is Heinlein, and I almost published under that name until I was like, oh, wait a minute, I'm writing science fiction and the same thing as Heinlein and does not read the same. I got to be careful. So I went with my married name. So Heinlein, definitely. Aldous Huxley. I mean, Brave New World. There's not a lot of people, I think, that read that book and don't walk away feeling somewhat changed. And I don't even want to say it just because part of me, I've been in so many arguments over Ayn Rand, like Atlas Shrugged. I get into arguments over that book pretty regularly, but it's definitely part of my inspiration. It's in there.
Yeah, that one, I feel like that you could do an entire, like probably several episodes of like, or a full season of a podcast on that book, just because it's
intense.
It's
very
a lot.
intense.
I tried reading it back in the day, and I think her writing style just wasn't doing it for me because I'd heard so much about it, and then like,
yeah.
Plus, like, and then it, like the whole, I think then just some of like the people that are attracted to that book can kind of put you off of it too. Like,
yeah, I can agree with that.
Because I've heard, I know the general story of it, and it's fascinating, but it's also, I feel like it's one of those, that book definitely seems to have a life of its own, just out in the world, like way beyond whatever. I mean, I've heard the author. There's a lot of like Ayn Rand was a very interesting person.
Definitely. And I think just kind of looking through her bio and everything, it's obvious that like she was a complicated person just in general.
Someone's going to do a movie on her someday, and there's probably some actress is probably going to get nominated for an Oscar for playing her. It's going to get, it'll be weird.
Absolutely. And so the final piece of inspiration would definitely be Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. She's one of my favorite. one of the best sci-fi novels of all time. It was current, and it actually brought science fiction out of the nerdy corner and into the mainstream. And I absolutely love her for that, and also thought the way that she wrote was just completely, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, and wrote it when she's like 18, 19.
Yeah, and she was talking about, it was like right as electricity was being like introduced. So, and I feel like that's kind of something that science fiction authors are doing now, where like AI is just being introduced. CRISPR, genetic editing, those things are just now being introduced. So I think a lot of science fiction will go in the direction of like, what does AI look like? What does genetic manipulation look like in the future? And so that for me, I felt that this is actually quite a current take on things that are coming up right now.
I mean, on one hand, it's exciting because there's so much stuff now that, the science fiction that we probably grew up on is starting to look like now it's science fact. It's like it's becoming very, very real.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I'm wondering, it makes me wonder, like, what's the next generation of that going to look like? What's like all these crazy, because then there was also people going like way out there with like stuff that's this, then you'll say like, well, that was clearly just fantasy because there's no way.
Yes.
But you give it enough time and then suddenly this thing starts looking very doable.
Yes, absolutely. One of my favorite little memes that you'll find on the internet is, author writes book called "Don't Build This Thing," and then 20 years later, science is like, we finally built the thing from this book. And so it's like, we give a warning, don't do this. And then it feels like technology about 20 years later is like, hey, what if we did what that book said not to do?
Well, yeah, there was a story recently how they, and there's a debate whether or not this is, it's the whole thing with the dire wolves, right? Like they're out there saying that we've revived the dire wolf. And then people say, well, those aren't real dire wolves because they took like DNA and then they meshed it with like current wolves. So I think really you've probably created something new that might've been part old. And there's this whole weird debate on it. But I'm like, when I saw that story, the first thing I thought was like, oh, well, we're one step closer to Jurassic Park.
Yep, absolutely. And if we do Jurassic Park, I really just hope that we make dinosaurs that I can ride like a cowboy, please. Like if we're gonna go apocalyptic, at least make it somewhat fun for me. That would be really nice.
Let me like ride a Triceratops and ram it into someone's car.
Oh yeah, absolutely, Stegosaurus for life, buddy. So my parents called me Megasaurus when I was growing up, so I like the Stegosaurus. But yeah, I think that one of the things that's most disappointing about living in the future that I anticipated as a kid is like, man, dystopia is kind of boring. I thought it would be more interesting. I don't like this dystopia. It just makes me nervous. And then I have to pay more bills. That's not what I anticipated. So I think there's a subreddit called A Boring Dystopia. And I'm very much like,
worst apocalypse ever.
Worst apocalypse ever. Very annoying, very long and drawn out.
When the pandemic hit, that was like the kind of like the joke line that everybody's like, man, I thought it was going to be like all like cool and we get to like, wear like Mad Max armor and kill some people. And now I'm just sitting around hoarding toilet paper.
Exactly. Yeah. It never looks the way you imagine it would look, but it's kind of like, that's a thing that I think that's a good trope that comes in like fantasy and science fiction, where it's like, I want to go on an adventure. And then you're on an adventure and it's like, adventures suck. So, and it's not just a trope, it's a reality. I definitely thought
like the stuff that makes movies and books good is the stuff that makes life bad.
It's true. It's true. Because if you're not experiencing it, it's a lot better than, actually going through it, because there's a slog, right? It always feels like there's so much action in the military. But one of the sayings in the military is hurry up and wait. Yeah. And it's just get your shit together and then sit there and do nothing and wait for us to tell you what to do.
I used to work with a guy at I worked at Turner Broadcasting for like 18 years. And I worked with a lot of military guys there. And one of them said like TV, like he described like working in TV very similar to the military in the sense that it was like hours of boredom followed by, interspersed with moments of sheer panic.
Yep. Punctuated with panic. That's life in the military, and it's life in a lot of different
if something
areas.
Bad happens on our job, no one's dying. So your career might die, but you'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, if you're working with broadcasting, I always think of War of the Worlds, and how that was broadcast at first, and it set off a little bit of panic. So you could cause some problems with broadcasting.
That's funny. Like, because now I never thought about it that way, but because now with deep fakes and AI,
yeah,
you just given me a whole new idea for a story. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. Please let me know about it.
Because I was thinking, because we were talking. I remember when the Blair Witch Project came out back in what was it, like late 90s? Was it 99?
Yeah, late 90s, early thousands. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to say it was like 99. I might be wrong about it, but it's people were wondering, because this was right about the time that the internet was really starting to jump off. Like, it had been around for a minute, but like it was starting to come where like now everybody had it. And it was kind of like this whole thing where people thought, we're starting to think, is this real? Is this real? And that was kind of the genius of the marketing of it. And people were wondering, like, will this ever happen again? And for the longest time, I was thinking, no, I don't think we're never going to. It was the closest thing we had to like that kind of War of the Worlds, where you could broadcast something out there and
have people
start really like going, like, did this happen? Did it really happen?
Yeah, absolutely. And that is something, I think that's really an interesting moment of like not even understanding your power until you've already done something. You're like, oh shit, I had a lot more power than I thought I did in this moment. Or it's just genius marketing, just absolutely genius getting it out there that way.
Yeah. But I was wondering for the longest time, would that even be possible today? But then again, we've seen, my God, some of the deep fakes and AI stuff I've seen are terrifying.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I also see people like read a meme and take that as like, the tacit truth. And it's like, no, that's a meme that some asshole put together. And maybe you should question the source on that. And so I've seen people believe ridiculous things that are like literally you could walk outside and find that is not true. And
yes,
then
it's like the gullibility or the things that people are willing to let themselves believe.
Yeah,
it's almost like it's just a matter of time before someone pulls off something, kind of does that thing where they can like a hoax, like on a mass level.
Oh yeah. Well, and that's, I think, part of the interesting thing that's happening, that I kind of see it as a positive. At first, I was annoyed very much so by the misinformation. But I'm also seeing that people are really starting to question everything that they are told. And I think that's really intelligent. It's a very good idea. And I also counsel people a lot if they allow me to. I'm not walking around like a cone machine or an advice machine, but I do like to tell people, when you are feeling fear, when you're feeling anxiety, when you're feeling nervous, you're not able to sleep, and you've got all these things going on, who is benefiting from that fear? Because 99% of the time, it's not you. So what do you like? Fear and the feeling of instability is something that capitalism has used for a really long time, right? We create a need and then sell the product that fulfills that need. That's a very capitalist way of doing things. And that's how we're all sold over time. And so that, I think, is a really important mindset to have. I'm really anxious. I feel fear. I am angry. I have these really extreme emotions. I can't do anything with them. And so why should you feel that way? What's the point? Right? And in the United States right now, most of the time when you're feeling something like that, it is to either keep you still and not doing anything, or it is to get you to buy something and spend your money. And those are the two things that I would probably be on the lookout for most of the time. When I start to feel anxious or fear, it's like, okay, obviously I need to do something to get myself out of this locked state.
Yeah, it's you always hear that there's always the I'm just asking questions crowd, and I think that's generally a good thing. But the thing is, like, are you genuinely looking for answers, and will you recognize the right answer when you find it?
Or are you just trying to poke holes in the argument and tear it down because it makes you uncomfortable?
Right.
So, and that's another thing.
I feel like if people are genuine about that, and they're genuinely kind of like seeking knowledge versus someone who's just trying to, stir the pot or just kind of muddy the waters. I think that's the big challenge like we have right now. I'm a big proponent of like media literacy.
Oh yes, absolutely. I think it's something that should be taught.
People get so taken in and so twisted about stuff, and whereas like
Mm-hmm.
As someone who, started studying this when I was young, and I'm not young anymore. But like that, just like seeing all the like the little tricks that people can pull and the things that,
Mm-hmm.
you can kind of like how certain stories can be slanted one way or another, or just little
Mm-hmm.
things like that, where you can always kind of say like, I see like most people like, it's like, I kind of always kind of chafe a little bit because people are like, oh my God, the news isn't always exactly the news. And I'm like, well, I've always known that. Right?
Yeah.
Like, how
Yeah.
come you're like, it's like, welcome to the party, pal. Like, that
Yeah.
whole thing is like, you're just now starting to figure this, like, that all things have a slant. Every, I
Yeah.
mean, my God, you've been watching commercials for your whole life and you're just now figuring this, like, that
It's
they're
true
maybe
because
not
we're not
always telling you
teaching
the
it.
truth.
We're not teaching it at a young age, right?
Right.
We're not looking at it as the problem that it really is, right? And so like my son is 4, he's about to be 5. He's on his tablet pretty consistently because I work from home. So I'm like, go play on your tablet while mommy works. Um, but we have conversations, daily conversations. He'll show me a video and be like, what is this? And I'm like, well, what do you think it is? And we have to have a full discussion about what's the intent of even making this video? Why would somebody make this? And those are the things that I'm doing at home. But I know for a fact that wasn't something, even when I was taught how to use the internet in high school and how to use search engines, nobody ever said, oh, you should question everything you read on the internet to me. Like nobody said those words. So I do think that we are definitely missing the mark there. Technology, I learned this in a history class in high school, I think. But there's a curve for technology, and that is basically it's exponential, right? So we get to about this point, and it's just vertical, and technology will only go faster and faster from there. So it's almost like we're building up this kind of inertia forward, and our own minds and our own ability to discern truth is not keeping up with that technology.
Yeah. I was just
So,
thinking there's some meme out there that says we're humans who have like, was it like Iron Age brains and medieval systems, and then we have like futuristic technologies. So just kind of like our
mhm.
brains are still kind of in that, like,
Yeah,
to the world that exists now. Like our brains haven't even fully adapted to it, and that's why everybody's always
mhm.
in a state.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and we're also, I said this earlier today to my husband. He was like messing with his hair. He just had like this little cow-like thing. And I just told him, I'm like, you look fine. He's like, it's bothering me. And I said, once upon a time, the only time we ever saw our reflection was like when we were walking past a stream. And I honest to goodness don't think we ever should have gone any further than that. This made us really weird. We do weird things all the time. Think about the grooming of your beard and my makeup that I very, very much so put on. So it just looks like I have eyebrows. Like we're very weird. People are strange, and I think that seeing our own faces all the time has just made us weirder over time.
And I think like just the whole thing with like social media and the internet, like having to be that connected, like have your consciousness kind of trying to cover so much area all the time.
Oh yeah,
Like our brains are
absolutely.
not wired for that.
No. And then when we do get attention, it changes us, right? Like you feel the pressure, even if it's online. And, like as my TikTok following grows, I notice that for me, I'm like, ooh, I want to make sure I look okay. I never gave a shit about that before. My original videos, like, are me just like in pajamas with my hair up. I look totally awful. But the more people that are watching, I do feel that pressure, right? That pressure is just kind of like showing up for me. And I'm not responding to it because I know it's there. I've noted that it showed up for me. But it's one of those, like, a lot of people don't even notice that pressure as it builds.
Well,
And
someone made a great point about talking about like, when you're getting like likes. Someone says like, I only got like 30 likes for this thing. And I says like, and someone says, well, can you imagine if 30 people came up to you all at once when we're telling you how much they liked this thing that you did? That would
yeah,
feel like a lot.
yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Like in
And that's
real life,
something.
that would be like, oh my God, that's like, you think like a big full classroom of people. Like
Mm-hmm.
you think like, imagine just like that. Now multiply that by
How,
hundreds or
yeah,
thousands.
exactly. And that pressure is there. But additionally, our little tiny dopamine hit we get every time we see a like, we're just like little rats in a cage. We like that little hit of dopamine. I totally get it. I'm one of them, like we're all the same. But it's also again, it's that literacy you're talking about. It's part of media literacy is understanding like how you respond. And it's not how does everybody else respond, but how do you respond? Like what's happening to me in my parasympathetic nervous system that is responding to this? And how is that taking control of the way that I think? You know, what is it? How do I get that control back in my life? So I hope that's one thing I really hope that media literacy will continue to kind of push forward is the idea that we can't lose ourselves. Once you lose your sense of self to the internet, it's really hard to gain it back through the internet, right? You need to leave the internet to come back to that sense of self. So the more people that take like social media breaks, the better I think it is. You know, turning off the news is a very good idea. I personally don't watch it at all, especially not any of the mainstream ones, because nah, fool, I don't need to have advertisements and people literally screaming at each other. Like,
well, yeah,
it's like
I could do a
ESPN.
whole other podcast about that. Just the
Oh
whole
yeah,
the game of the media. It's
absolutely.
and the thing is, and none of it's new. It's almost like watching like the intellectual version of a wrestling match, a professional wrestling match, where it's like we already know how this is more or less going to go, and you know that guy's going to do this move, and that guy, the other person's going to do it, and it seems like one person's going to hit you with this point, and the other person's going to counter with that one, and it's all just staged for you to just keep watching, even though no one's going to actually really. And of course, now that now of course, like now you'll see the things and like, oh, you'll go on YouTube and like, oh, so and so crushes somebody with an argument. Then you watch the video, it really wasn't that big of a deal.
Really.
The other person didn't concede anything. It's like, so it's just it's only kind of like the internet and social media is really just only kind of like acts, just kind of amplified.
It's reactionary. Yeah, it's reactionary. It just wants your immediate reaction. It doesn't really care if you read the article, if you click on it. That's all that really matters, right? And they very much so. I don't even, if I read the title to an article and I'm like, well, that seems like we're just trying to be evocative.
Yeah,
I'll click on it.
I'm sitting here talking shit, but I'm like, I'm susceptible to it too. I've clicked on those videos where you look at it and you go, oh, this is some bullshit. And you and like, cause sometimes you'll just see like, okay, I have to check this out. Cause it sounds so wild. Just that kind of like mad scientist part of my brain says, I want to know what this is about.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I'm really up in arms about it and I'm just like, I won't give you the click, I'll just go to Google and I'll try to like Snopes it or whatever.
Run around them.
Yeah, I'm like, I'll go around you. You can't have my click, you bullshitter. So I definitely have those moments where I'm like, I won't do that, but I will.
I really wish there was, and I know I'm putting this idea out there at the risk of ruining everything. If there was some way you could like flag certain videos or things as just pure clickbait, I don't know what that symbol would look like. Mm-hmm. I'm sure the thing was too, like it'd be abused on the other end, that people who didn't like something would just go like, you know, like you see in all the movies or TVs, they review bomb something.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I think that there is a way to do that. Definitely. It's just more like having the way that like a website can have mods. I think it's not a terrible idea to just have mods, right? Yeah. Just actual fucking people that are sitting there and actually that's what they're doing as parsing, you know? So if you click, oh, this isn't correct. Well, somebody actually looks at it. Because one of the problems we're running into with AI is just not capable at this point in time of taking in like the deeper context of what's going on in a conversation. So I do think it's I'm a job creator over here with my ideas. I think your idea is great. And I think that it's also the opportunity to get people employed.
Yeah. I mean, it's again, I could do a whole thing on media and maybe I will. I don't know.
I think you should. I'll watch it. Definitely.
Awesome. We'll bring you back as a guest.
Okay. Yay. I will study. I will make sure that I am prepared.
Well, I could do this all day, but I will, since we've already gone long over the half hour and approaching the hour,
snap.
Tell the people where they can find you online or on social media if they want to at you.
All right. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And I'm also starting a Substack if you're into Substack. I don't really know what I'm doing just yet, so you can wait a little bit if you want. That's fine. I have a website called shatteredhollows.com, and you can find me on Shattered Hollows webpage on Facebook. I have a page for that. My actual Facebook is pretty limited on who can find me, but you can contact me directly through the page on Facebook, and it'll connect you to my email, and I can also reach out to you separately from there. My books right now, again, are only available on Amazon for the time being, but I will be expanding that to other areas like Barnes & Noble, etc.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming out, and we'll be on the lookout for your stuff.
All right. Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me, Brandon.
That will be all for this episode. This podcast has been a Corcutta Media production. To learn more about this show or other podcasts, visit corcuttamedia.com/podcasts or follow us on social media at Corcutta Media. This recording or any portion thereof may not be reproduced or used in any manner whatsoever without the express written permission of the publisher, except for use of brief quotations in a review. Copyright 2025 by Corcutta Media. All rights reserved.